Many of us in India know Kenya for its cricket connections, but there is so much more about this beautiful country. Kenya, a land of stunning contrasts. From the Indian Ocean's turquoise coastline to the vast savannas of the Great Rift Valley, from high peaks like Mount Kenya to the deep green of Aberdare Ranges, it is also a land of adventure, whether it's mountain climbing, diving on coral reefs, or hiking through wild highlands. But beyond its postcard beauty lies something deeper, a quiet force that helps sustain all the life, the bees. I have a particular interest in beekeeping, and through this journey I happen to meet extraordinary individuals who are not only keeping this tradition alive, but also working tirelessly to protect the bees and the ecosystems they sustain. In this episode, I present a conversation with Mr. Ernest Simeoni, a beekeeper from Kenya and the founder of African Beekeepers Ltd. He spent last 30 years of his life working with bees across East Africa. He offers a rare first-hand view of a region often seen in the headlines but not lived experience. We spoke about traditional beekeeping methods, how the industry is shifting, and environmental, cultural, and other forces shaping the future of bees in Africa. But this is not just a story of honey. This is a story about land, memory, resilience, and what it means to live in harmony with nature. If you have ever wondered what makes African honey special and how a single bee connects the story of a continent, this episode is for you.
I was very surprised because a couple of years ago, I went to Gujarat state.
Okay.
And in Gujarat, they know nothing about honey. They don't even eat it. I was very surprised.
Okay.
Because I asked many people there. I went with a friend of mine and we were staying in some village. And I was asking these people, don't you do beekeeping? Yeah, they said they don't know about beekeeping. Even they don't eat honey there. So I was very surprised. But I know India produces a lot of honey.
Yes, sir.
But I don't know.
live in Gujarat only. I live in Gujarat only, but I am not from this region.
Which part of India?
The eastern part of India, East Coast.
Bombay.
Bombay is West Coast, sir.
Oh, East Coast. Yeah, okay. East Coast, yeah.
I speak a language called Telugu.
Okay.
So, sir, so please tell me about, like, what are your earliest memories of Africa or the countries you lived in, like 4 to 5 decades ago, and after the Second World War, what was it like in Sudan or in Tanzania, Kenya, or Rwanda? We know more about these, killings or struggles, poverty, and all. But I don't know how much it is true and how much it is false. So I want to know the first-hand information about, and I want to understand those times.
Anyway, I'm born in Kenya. I've lived all my life here. My father was a prisoner of war here in Kenya, Italian prisoner of war, because the Italians were fighting in Ethiopia. And then the British caught them, took over, caught them. And a lot of them were brought into Kenya and put in camps, prison camps. So my father was in one of the camps. That was the 45 war. Then the war got finished. Then they all went back to Italy, the ones that were left. And my father came back here. And he met my mother here. My mother was from the Seychelles. And then started farming, and he's been farming here, and we were born here, and that's how I'm come to this country. So I've traveled several places. I've traveled to Ethiopia a bit, Somalia, Sudan, Uganda, Tanzania, South Africa, Namibia. Yeah, those are the places I've traveled to. And most of the places I travel is because of my job. Yes. Because I have been doing beekeeping now for 30 years here. I run a company in Kenya, that's African Beekeepers. So the travels is to do with what I do for beekeeping, and I did a bit of Mozambique. I was going to do a project in Mozambique, but it never worked out. So I've done all those areas. And the question you're asking, the times, Africa has changed. Africa is not how it used to be. During my young days, Africa, there were very little people. Now the population has exploded to phenomenal numbers. As far as Kenya is concerned, I think Kenya is the best African country in the region. I don't know anything about West Africa because I've never been to West Africa. But from East Africa, for East Africa, that is Ethiopia, Somalia, Kenya, Sudan, Rwanda, Tanzania, northern Congo, and northern Mozambique. Kenya is the best country out of all those countries. It's best. The people are good. People are very good. People in Kenya are very hardworking. Tanzania is very rich in land. They've got huge land. They've got a lot of arable land. Kenya, we have very little arable land. We've got a lot of desert. No, well, desert as in semi-arid, where there's not much agriculture that can happen. But the parts that is arable, there's a lot of agriculture going on, and the people are working quite hard. We have a lot of tourism, big tourism. We have got a lot of parks, national parks, game parks. So we have a lot of that. In fact, tourism is our main foreign exchange earner, one of our main foreign exchange earners. So we can say Kenya is one of the best. Tanzania is a huge country. You see, in East Africa, that's Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. The British they dominated these areas, okay? In fact, Kenya was a colony, British colony. Uganda was a protectorate. Tanzania, I think it was also, the British didn't have a lot of hold on there. So when one of the presidents, the first president of Tanzania, he then decided to nationalize all the country, and he kicked all the Indians out. And the Indians came here, brought by the British from India, mainly to build railways. And so a lot of these Indians stayed in these countries and started business. And Tanzania, there was a lot of Indians. They all got kicked out. The white people, the farmers, got kicked out. Uganda, the same thing. Uganda, they kicked all the Asians out. And these people, these Indians that came here, they started setting up factories and a lot of industry. And so when they kicked all these people out of Uganda and out of Tanzania, sort of the industry sort of collapsed. But you see, Kenya did not chase the Asians out, and we had a very, very big Indian population in Kenya. And Kenya, they stayed here, and they actually controlled the industry in this country. I mean, we've got big industries here. We've got big manufacturing companies manufacturing all sorts of things. So the Indians, they dominate that area of industry. So, and that is one of the biggest setbacks in some of these Tanzania and Uganda. Rwanda, of course, that was another problem because there the Indians never went there, so there's no Indians there. There's no reason to go. That was colonized, or that was taken over by French. Belgians, it was Belgians, yeah. And they have a very different way of operating. They don't, like you see in Kenya, the British, they left a lot of, how can I say, systems. There was a lot of systems here. And we still, up to today, we still follow some of those systems. But in all these other countries like Rwanda and Burundi, there was no systems, and it was very, the Belgians oppressed those people and then created this tribal thing where you got tribes fighting with each other, a divide and rule thing. It was mainly divide and rule systems. And so now you find these tribes are fighting against each other. And I don't know if you know about the history of Rwanda. They had this big genocide in 1994, where one tribe killed the other tribe, thousands of people killed, and that's what happens. But in Kenya, the British they ruled this country for some years, and they left systems here, and they set up procedures. They set up dairy industry, they set up poultry industry, they set up sugarcane industry, they set tea plantations, they started coffee plantations, and even today there are those big plantations are still going on, and a lot of exports of tea. I think we're maybe the third biggest producers of tea in the world. I think India's the leading. I think Sri Lanka, and then I think uh, Kenya is the second. Kenya is very big in tea. So that's a bit of story about how the area is, and out of all those countries, Kenya is the best country. I mean, it's still very free. You can start your own business. You can do things. Yeah, I when you talk about poverty, I wouldn't say that. I'm quite against that issue of poverty because Africa has got a lot of resources. Africa is can produce a lot of food. You've got cultures, people who are comfortable living out there in the rural areas, doing small things and not working very hard, and they have no problems. But people come here and they think people are poor, but people are not poor. This depends on how your people are. So yeah, and I know this because I'm very involved in beekeeping, and I'm working with community groups, and I'm getting involved with communities all over the country. So you get involved with all these different tribes, and it's quite an interesting thing because you're dealing with different tribes, and you see their habits and the way they operate, and it's a very, for me, it's a very interesting thing. So when you're talking about poverty, I mean, it's I don't think that word should be used because it's not an issue of poverty. That's how people live. I mean, if you go out there and you look at these people, and the way I live in the center of Nairobi, I live in Nairobi, which is the capital of Kenya, and I go out in the rural areas and I'm driving a car, and these guys are living in a mud hut. And yes, you can think these are poor people, but these are not poor people. That's how they live. That's how they want to live. I mean, that's how it is. So yeah, that's how it is. Yeah.
The same goes with India also. The misconception of poverty for the Western world.
Yes, and that's what happens here. And the biggest problem that I think, and I'm very allergic to NGOs and donor communities and donor countries because they come here and they spoil people on the pretext that they're dealing with poor people, and they want to give them free things, and you create a donor dependent population that doesn't work. It
Yes.
just doesn't work. So, and I'm very much involved in that, and in Kenya, in all these East African countries, I think most of the African countries, all these donors come here. The United Nations, FAO, all these guys. They come in here and they think they're helping poor people, but they're actually doing nothing. And for me, they're making people poorer because people don't need this rubbish. So that's how I see it. When I went to India, I've done some trips to India. I went to Amritsar, I went to Delhi, I went to Taj Mahal, and you see people, yeah, and you got to understand that also because I think India is quite a complicated situation, and there's a lot of and religion is also another big issue in India. That's my thought because when I went around, I could see, but it's yeah.
You've been in very popular places like Delhi and all this. You will have a different image when you visit these places. They are
Yeah.
touristy, and then there is See, every country has good and bads, like
Of
rural
course, of
India is
course, of course.
beautiful. So it's different. It's same with every country, I believe. Wherever there is a lot of tourism, lot of crowd coming in, there you have a lot of problems. Like,
This is happening mainly in big cities, right?
yeah,
Big
yes, yes.
cities, you have robberies and all that. It's the same thing here. But you go out in the country and you don't have a problem.
No
And then,
issues.
yeah, and then I have a very nice story for you about honey in Tanzania.
Yes,
I have
sir.
a very good story, but we'll talk about that later because
That later, yes, I am coming to
you
that part. When we start discussing about beekeeping, we will talk
yeah, yeah.
about the
So
beekeeping.
that's generally the story. There's a lot of white people in Kenya, of course, because of the British. There's big farmers, big farms, um, wheat farms, sugarcane farms. As I said, tea. The British were into tea farming. The British were into coffee farming. So we still have very big coffee farms. We've got horticulture, which is very big. We export a lot of horticultural crops to the UK, to the European Union. We're now into avocados, which is very big now. Kenya is one of the biggest producers of avocado. So horticulture and agriculture is quite big. And so there's a lot of white farmers, but now a lot of Africans have taken over some of these farms. And then yeah, they're doing quite well. We've got a coastline. So we've
Yes.
got a lot of hotels, tourism, big time tourism, as I said. So it's a mix of everything, and it sort of works, it works. It goes nicely. So yeah,
What language is widely spoken in Kenya? Not English.
yeah. Okay, the main language is English. That is that you can move anywhere in this country and people speak English. Okay,
Hmm.
it's taught in schools, and then of course you got Kiswahili, which I think you must have come across that word from Tanzania, because
Yes, yes.
Kiswahili
Swahili.
it's spoken for it's a very common language in East Africa. That is Kenya, Tanzania, a bit of Uganda, not too much, bit of Rwanda, not too much, and northern Congo, yes, and Burundi. They speak Swahili, so you can get along with Swahili in those countries. But Kenya, of course, Kenya and Tanzania, it's like the main language. I mean, it's Tanzania, it's Swahili then English. In Kenya, it's I think more English and Swahili. It's the same. And then you've got all the vernacular languages, which are there's many tribes here, so each tribe has got its own language. But as long as you speak Swahili in this country, you get along, and you speak English, you get along. So it's not a problem. Uganda, it's English mainly. They don't speak very much Swahili, a little bit, but not too much. So it's mainly English, and then there's the local language there, which is Kiganda, which is I can't speak it, and it's a bit difficult. And then of course Rwanda is French, and mainly French and their language. Burundi, same thing, French and their language. Mozambique is Portuguese, and northern
Okay.
Mozambique they speak Swahili.
Okay.
So northern towards Tanzania border they speak Swahili. So with Swahili, you get on even in Congo. Congo is French, and northern Congo is Swahili, so you'll get along there. So I speak Swahili fluently, of course, being born
Yeah.
there. So yeah, so that's the language, and it's a nice language. It's pretty easy to learn. Many white people come here, and in no time they speak. A lot of the Indians they speak Swahili. Some of them don't even speak good English. They speak more Swahili.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, yeah,
Does it have a script?
yeah,
Swahili,
yeah,
does it have a script?
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
get
Okay.
dictionary in Swahili. It's a proper language. I mean, it's taught in
Okay.
school. It's
Okay.
taught in
Yeah.
school.
Cool.
So
And
I have quite a lot of Indian friends with big businesses, nice businesses. Got a lot of Indian friends here.
And how was the childhood days, sir? How were those childhood days when, like, you were 16, 15 years old? Kenya got independence during
Oh,
1963.
those were the good days in Kenya. Those were very good days. Population was very little. Um, things were not expensive. Things were cheap. Those were very good old days. Those now it's become more complicated. Population have exploded too much, and of course, business is very difficult. Cost of living is very high. Those days used to be very good, very good. It's totally different. I mean, when you look at from the early 90s, going all the way back to 65, because before that there was the colonial rule,
Yeah.
and that was not very good because the colonial rule was very complicated in Kenya because you had the whites, you had the colored, and you had the Indians. And so the Indians had their own place and stayed on their own. The whites would stay in their own. The Africans would stay in their own. And then the British got all the Africans and put them in places where they were living all together, because the British were taking their far land. They were taking land. So it was not a very good time at that time. I didn't, I didn't see that, because by the time I was born in '55. So by the time I knew what was going on, '60s, that in that colonial thing, of course there was a big war here. There was a particular tribe that fought the British to get them out of here, and it was a terrorist war. It was like a terrorist war against the British. And then the British left. Of course, they got defeated and they left. But and that was not a very good time. But I didn't see that time, because by the time I started growing up, it was all finished, and the British went off, and then now people started getting together slowly and mixing up, and still there was a bit of tension. I remember, because in my school days there was a bit of tension in the schools. There was not many Africans in the school where we were. It was Indians and whites and that kind of thing. But then '70s it started getting now easier and easier, and then it came okay. But '70s, '80s, and early '90s, that was very good time. Things were good. Things were working. The situation of the country was good. The economy was good. But then we had a president that came into power. I can't remember which year, but he came into power, and that president lasted for 20 years, 22 years, and he messed this place up completely. And then another president came and then tried to fix it, and now we've gone into a big mess. Now we're in trouble. Now we're in big trouble. Now in trouble. But I can say the whole of Africa, it's like that. It's all these governments. People want to grab money. People want to make a lot of money using the government and using the country's resources, and it makes people, yeah, it makes it harder for people. There's no money. People are struggling. People are really struggling in all these African countries. And then of course you have unemployment, big time unemployment. Young people, you've got a lot of young people. I mean, these countries in Africa here, the majority are young people, and they've got no employment. And then, according to me, the Chinese have made it even worse, because the Chinese, there's no, if you go out of Nairobi, people don't make things anymore. You want something, you bring it from China. You want clothes, you bring it from wherever. There's no factories here to do these things. And we are dependent on China full time. In fact, now it has become very bad, because you just WhatsApp somebody in China or a company in China and you're importing things. So we're importing everything, you know. even now, these politicians, they're importing sugar, they're importing rice, they're importing all flour for making their local dishes. It's all imported. So you're killing everything else, So, but this is related to the person who's in power. If the person is in power has got no focus, I mean, this is how it goes. And all these African countries, that is what's happening. And some of them are so bad, like in Congo. If you go to Congo, like Kinshasa, which is the main capital, eggs are imported, meat is imported, everything is imported, even juice, even everything is imported. And a lot of these countries, that's how it is. But okay, Uganda is good because it's very fertile, and they grow their staple food in Uganda is bananas.
Wow.
Okay, so it's bananas breakfast, it's bananas lunch, it's bananas dinner, and they grow a lot of bananas.
Yeah.
And so the food situation in Uganda is very good. I mean, Ugandans cannot starve. They've got a lot of food, and they don't care about special things like what can I say? All these special foods that you get, like spaghetti or rice,
Yeah.
or they don't care about that because they have their traditional food and they're very fine. Kenya now, because of modern lifestyle, you've got now the fast foods, all the fast foods, all the burgers, all those guys are here.
American.
American, yes. So it's all here in the main cities mainly, and the big towns also. So yeah, the new generation of people are now, things are changing, so it becomes a bit complicated. But yeah, that's how it is. Yeah.
What is the daily lunch, dinner, breakfast in Kenya?
Okay, we have the staple food is you got maize, and you grind maize into flour, and then they cook it into like a cake,
Yeah.
and then they eat that with it can be with a bit of a stew or some greens. That's their main food. And then of course there's different tribes. There's another tribe that eats maize and beans that are cooked together. So that sort of is the main food around in everywhere you go. Of course, now in the big towns, now they eat chips, potato chips, stuff like that. But in the normal food is that maize meal. They call it maize meal, and they use a vegetable called sukuma wiki, which is like a cabbage leaf, and then they cook it, and then they eat it with this stuff. That's basically the main food. Of course, a lot of bread is eaten here. There's a lot of bread is eaten here, so yeah, that's another thing. So basically, that's how it goes.
I think the name of that food plate, lunch plate, is called ugyari, something like that. Ugyari.
Ugali, yes, yes. I was going to tell you, it's called ugali.
Yeah.
Ugali is a staple food for Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, a bit of Uganda, Zambia, too much,
Okay.
Malawi, too much, Zimbabwe,
Ah.
South Africa. Yeah, that's sort of the it's all done with maize, and that's how it is. Yeah.
I suddenly I read somewhere about ugali.
Yeah, it's a very common thing. I also eat it. I also like it. So yeah, it's a very common food. Yeah.
What about milk? Any milk consumption over there? Milk, dairy
Eh,
products?
Yes, Kenya is a very big milk producer. Again, because of the British,
Yeah.
and so the dairy industry was very well developed here.
Okay.
And so you've got a lot of small scale farmers that produce milk and sell it to a dairy company. you know. So we
Yes.
consume a lot of milk. We drink a lot of tea with milk. So if you go into the rural area, it's tea and milk. Some parts, some parts. There's the northern part where they drink black tea.
Yeah.
Coffee has not been very common, by the way. We grow a lot of coffee, but coffee was never drunk here. Again, because of the British. The
Yeah.
British were exporting all the coffee.
Okay.
And so, but tea was, they brought in tea that locals could drink the tea, but the coffee was mainly exported. It's quite interesting because we do a lot of coffee. Even Tanzania does a lot of coffee, but they
Okay.
don't drink coffee. And Tanzania don't even drink much milk,
Okay.
and they're not very big milk producers. Uganda, yeah, they do a lot of milk. There's a place where the president comes from. There's an area where the Ugandan president comes from where they're cattle people. They're pastoralists. And so there's a lot of milk there. But in other parts of Uganda, you'll not find milk. They're not milk people. But Kenya, we're milk people. We have a lot of dairy.
In India, milk is like one of the very important component of our food system.
Yes,
Milk,
I think India is one of the largest producers of milk in the world. I think
yeah,
here the milk industry is very, very well developed. Very, very. So there's a lot
yeah.
of yogurt, there's a lot of butter, there's a lot of ghee. It's very well developed.
So we eat and see the place where I come from a Telugu speaking region, the
Yeah.
eastern coast from the east coast of India. In our region, yogurt is the finish of the meal. We eat rice and yogurt together to
Yes,
finish our
yes,
meal.
yes, yes. And some Indians do that here also.
Yeah. Okay.
I've seen some Indians do it here like that. Yes.
And one more question about the education system, sir.
Okay,
How?
the education system was very good. So you go to a nursery school, then you go to primary school, and then you go to secondary school. From secondary school, then you go to university. But now in the rural areas, it's very complicated because the governments were running the schools, most of the schools, and so they don't get money, they don't get paid because they were supposed to do free schooling, and then it's not very good. So the education, it used to be very good in Kenya, but it's falling back when you come to the government schools. There's very good private schools, very, very good private schools. They've got quite a few universities, but generally the education is good. People are quite educated in Kenya.
And what about the
Yeah.
transportation system? Is it difficult to travel within the state, within the country?
No, its transport system is very well. What do I say? They've got these local people who have their own minibuses. They call them matatus. The matatus, they run most of the places of the country, and some when you're going far distances, like from Nairobi to the coast or Nairobi towards the Uganda border, there's buses, very good coaches. So traveling is good, and Kenyans love traveling. They love traveling. I mean, the roads are full of cars and buses, and traveling is good. We've got a very good train service from Nairobi to the coast. We used to have a very good train service from Nairobi to Lake Victoria. I don't know if you look on the map, you'll see Lake Victoria, which you are bordering Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. That's a very big lake. So there's a very big town on the lake, Kisumu, and there used to be a train going to Kisumu. That got messed up. It was done by the British. In fact, that's why all the Asians came here, because they brought all these Indians, engineers, laborers to work on the railway. And they built this railway from the coast all the way up to Lake Victoria. And that then went into Uganda. Okay. So the train, then recently, the Chinese built the Nairobi to coast railway, which is now very good. And now there's talk that they're going to do from Nairobi to Kisumu, which is the border town with the Lake Victoria town. So traveling, yeah, it's the road systems are good. We can say they're fairly good. You can drive. Like this week, I've just come from a trip that I've done 1,500 Ks. So driving on tarmac. So we're driving around. Tanzania has also got very good roads. The road network in East Africa is not too bad. It's good. It's good. So what do you do for a living? What do you do for a living?
I'm an engineer, sir, software engineer.
Okay.
And apart from my engineering education background, I am an adventurer. And then I transformed my body from a very chubby, fat guy. I mean, not fat, but yeah, still lazy guy to an adventurer who can climb mountains without supplemental oxygen above death zone.
Wow.
I'm happy about it.
I've got a friend of mine. Maybe I must make you introduction to this guy. I've got a Tanzanian friend. Have you heard of Kilimanjaro?
Yes, sir. One day I'm going to come and do it in I'll do it. I want to come to Kilimanjaro.
Well, if you want to come to Kilimanjaro, I've got a very good friend. He's a Tanzanian.
Okay.
And he climbs Kilimanjaro and down in one day. I think he's a super guy. He's not a natural guy because his lungs are. He comes to visit me in Nairobi, and he wakes up in the morning and he runs 10 kilometers before he does anything. So when you want to come to Kilimanjaro, or if you ever do, let me know. I'll connect you with this guy, because what he does, he organizes all those trips. He's got a company in Moshi, the town near Kilimanjaro there, and he's got a company that organizes and take people up the mountain. That's his job. So when you want, it's small world. I'll connect you with that guy. Very nice guy.
Definitely. Kilimanjaro is one of the destinations for all the mountaineers. They just it's not a really difficult climbing experience, but it is one of the very important mountain for all the climbing community.
Yeah. So when you know you want, let me know. I'll connect you.
Yes, sir. I want to visit Nairobi. That's for sure. Kenya. Now the flight fares are really, really, really affordable. So it's like from here I can get it for 10,000 rupees. Like it is like how much? 50, 60, $120 one side.
Yes.
It's very affordable. So I think so. I will visit very soon.
I think what you're doing is a very good thing, because when you start connecting with people and you make friends with people and you want to visit these places, it's always nice to have somebody that you know, because then you can enjoy the trip and get to see things that if you didn't know anybody and you came here, I mean, how do you start? That kind of thing. Although there's a lot of people that do that, I know, but it's always nice. That's my feeling, because even when I travel to places, I don't like going to a place where I don't know people. Then it's very difficult, But if you know somebody, and if you get somebody who's good and a good hospitality, then he can take you around and organize things for you. It's always good like that. So I think it's very important to connect with people and and get to know people.
Yeah. So what is my realization is in my life, I'm still young. I didn't see the world or something, but my realization, what I want to do is what I understood is the purpose of life is to see the world. There is nothing else that you can actually, feel. A lot of money, it's okay. Money is needed. But if you see the world, then I think that is the fulfillment of life. That's what I feel.
Yeah, it's more than money. It's a very interesting to see people, different places, different cultures.
Eating
It's
different
nice.
foods and
It's
then
good. Yeah.
So with that thought process, first I want to explore India. So I took a cycle, normal cycle, pedal bike.
Yes.
Pedal bike, bicycle.
Yes.
And then I started from my home, and then I circumnavigated my country on a pedal
Wow.
bike in 110 days.
Wow.
It's an endurance ride, and as well as it's an opportunity, and I want to get rid of all my fears, and it's a solo ride. So I get to see this country more than anybody else in this country. So it was done in two phases. One is the mainland India and then northeastern India. So I did it in two seasons. One season I covered 8,200 kilometers in a single shot without breaks, every day 100 kilometers average. That was something.
Wow. So
And
do you
then in
get
the north,
sponsorship? Do you get some sort of
no, sir,
sponsorship?
I don't know. I don't ask money. I don't take donations. I do it whatever within my limits. Small budget travels.
Wow, 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 wow. Because it can be quite expensive, eh?
No, not. India is not expensive if you know the way to travel, like the way
Yes,
I want.
yes.
Because I won't be able to. I should not spend a lot of money because first thing I'm not in a position to spend that kind of money. I don't have. I'm not a rich guy, and also this is about connecting to people and then go meet, get rid of your fears, go find unknown situations, meeting strangers. So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
so
Yes, I
I did
know.
it in very limited budget. It was very affordable. Like total cost of the mainland India is less than $600.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's real
Yeah,
budget, eh?
yeah.
Yeah. I
It,
also,
it- and it was a fantastic experience, sir. I had every day, every evening, I met somebody who gave me shelter. I slept on footpaths on the roadside with the construction workers.
yes, 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 yes. It's quite an experience that, eh? It's a big
I think so, sir.
experience. Must
But
be.
one lifetime is not enough to see my country or any country, even a small country also.
Yeah. I have a lifetime ambition, which I don't know if I'm gonna make it, but I want to drive from Nairobi down to Cape Town.
That is very easy, sir. It's not much, less than 3,000 kilometers.
Yeah, but it's expensive to do if you're gonna drive.
Oh.
Um, it's expensive. It's very expensive to do. But I really want to do that. Before I die, I want to do that because it's a big experience. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's
So,
beautiful.
as you said about Nairobi to Cape Town, I have one dream project. I have already, there are like folders in my computer, which country I want to visit and then where I want to cycle. So, this is my dream cycle route from Cairo to Dodoma.
Cairo to Dodoma.
Yeah.
Cairo to Dodoma now it's going to be very complicated
Yeah.
because you got to go through Sudan,
Yeah.
and now there's conflict, bad conflict there. I don't know if you're going to do that. I can't see you do that. Because
I don't know
Sudan
when it
now,
happens, but these are the projects.
yeah. But that must be quite a nice trip. I remember in 1976, I drove from Kenya to Juba, which is in southern
So
Sudan.
not South Sudan.
Southern Sudan, yes. And I met a British couple. They were hitchhiking from Nairobi to Cairo. In fact, they were going to Europe, to Britain. But they had a rough time. They had a very rough time. Some of these countries now, it's tough, you know. Sudan now, Sudan is fighting badly, very bad fighting. I don't know if you can come from Cairo through Ethiopia. I don't know. You still have to go through South Sudan. That's going to be a bit of a problem.
So the project is the why
But
I had got
maybe in some
crossing
years
the
to come,
Sahara is the drive. Crossing the Sahara is the project actually. So this is the I thought like this is most populated route. So that's why I
yeah,
planned it.
yeah,
Otherwise, I'm okay to cross from Morocco to Nigeria or somewhere down on the west
yeah,
also.
yeah, yeah. The only problem now with Africa is conflict. A lot of conflict. I've seen some Europeans doing it, but it's quite dangerous, because a lot of conflict. Even I was thinking of doing doing Kenya through Tanzania, through Mozambique on the coast, because Mozambique's got a very big coastline, right down to South Africa.
Yeah.
But Mozambique is a no-go zone. You can't do it. I wouldn't even try. Yeah, it's now these countries are a problem, a big problem.
See, sir,
But
we don't know what happens.
maybe later on it might be good, but I wouldn't say. I don't know. But now it's not good.
Yeah.
But maybe later on it's good. But it's very interesting to go through all these countries and see the different people, and so it's quite an experience. Quite an experience.
So, okay. So now if I talk to you about beekeeping, I'll tell you, correct me if I'm wrong. So in about my research, so I travel to the mountains regularly. So in that journey, I encountered a couple of farmers in the Himalayas, very rich, fertile land, and then they grow apples, pears, and plums, several other varieties of fruits. So in Himachal Pradesh, almost every home in certain altitude around 1500 meters to 2000 meters, around like 6000 feet or 9000 feet, they have wooden houses, and then every house in a corner there is a wooden box, long box, which is made of a different kind of wood which is found in jungles of Himalayas. It's a hollow box, and then they bring these wild bees, small wild bees. The bee type is Apis cerana, and then they keep it in their homes, and then every 6 months they extract honey. They don't cut the full hive; they cut only 60% of the hive after the honey is formed, and the rest of it is left for the bees for when they don't have food. So they extract this honey in two different seasons. One is in June or July, before just during the beginning of the monsoon, and then the next season they extract honey is in November. During July, because of a lot of blossoms, so many, it's a before the fruits form, bees will get a lot of nectar, and then honey tastes in apple flavor, or depends on which farm is near to that one. And then the second season is November, and the taste is it's wild. It cannot describe the fruit from which flower it is. And then there is other type of honey is called mad honey. You must be knowing about mad honey, which and then certain type of bees, the big laboriosa, Apis laboriosa is the type of the bee where these bees fly higher, and then they get nectar from rhododendron flowers, and then which gives you that hallucination high when you consume more. So these are the types of honey. This is how Himalayas make honey. So now, because that is just one kind of information, but I want to know about how honey is extracted in the rest of the world. How honey is part in India, we have honey is important component. How Africans see honey actually in Kenya in their daily lives.
Well, in Africa, honey is a big thing because it's again used as medicine. Most of the parts of Africa, the whole of Africa, in fact, honey is a very big thing, and it's been a very old practice for many centuries, and mainly used for medicine and food. But the other thing in Africa, honey is used to make local brew, an alcoholic
Brew.
drink. Yes, alcohol. Okay. So a lot of the honey that is used in many African countries is they make what they call the local brew, which is the local alcoholic beverage. Okay, because of the sugar fermentation, and it makes that stuff. So this is a very big thing in many of these countries. Honey is used for that, and then honey is used in cultural ceremonies like weddings, like those kind of things. Like some of these tribes, if you're going to get married to a girl, you've got to take the parents a whole jerry can of honey, The old guy will probably get somebody to make the brew for him. It's a cultural thing, you know. It's like it's a cultural thing. So honey has been that kind of thing. It's cultural. It's alcoholic beverage. It is medicine. That's how it is in. That's how the traditional honey thing is. And it's very interesting because for me, I find it's very interesting because you find the 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 the, the issue of keeping bees, like the way you say, in log hives. These are beehives made out of logs and carved out, and this thing is dying here because the old people used to do it. The young people, they don't want to do these jobs. They want to go to town. They want to ride motorbikes. They want to talk on mobile phones and that. So the art is dying, and that's happening in a lot of African countries. It's the change of lifestyle that is changing this kind of activity, and because beekeeping in all these countries has never been commercialized, so it is just for medicine, it's for local brew, it's for ceremonies, it's not for business. Okay, and so you find that Kenya, for instance, is a net importer of honey. Okay, we import 95% of the honey we consume. We import it from Tanzania. Okay, Tanzania is one of the world's largest producers, African countries producers of honey. There is Ethiopia first, second is Tanzania, and I'm going to tell you why, because there's a reason why. So this industry, in this activity in a lot of these countries in Africa is dying off because the old people, they were doing this and they did not pass it on, or the young people don't want to do this anymore. The education has come. You know, this activity was for rural people in the rural areas. So the old guy, he's got maybe 500 of these loci, and he's getting this honey, and he's trading it with people who are making this local brew or that kind of thing. But it was not a very organized business, you know. So now with all this change of people getting more educated, this thing is dying off, and it's very interesting because it's just dying. And the bee population are also declining because habitat is getting messed up, environment is getting messed up. You know, we're building houses, estates, we are farming in these places. So pesticides is killing bees. So it's a very complex thing. So Kenya, like I told you, is a net importer of honey. Okay, we are importing all our honey. Now the story about Tanzania, is a very interesting story, and not many people know this story. This story I got because there's a British friend of mine about 5 years ago, 8 years ago, wanted me to do a project in Tanzania on beekeeping. So there's an area in Tanzania, southern Tanzania, where it has a lot of specific type of vegetation that produces a lot of nectar. If you Google, you'll see it's called the Miombo woodlands. Miombo woodlands. Now this vegetation is found in southern Tanzania. It's found
Okay.
in northern Mozambique. It's found in
Okay.
Zambia.
Okay.
It's found in Malawi. It's found in this whole belt goes down to Angola, Zaire, Congo, and so Tanzania produces most of the honey that is consumed in East Africa. comes from southern Tanzania. The reason being is that vegetation. Okay. Now, the issue why, the thing why, so this British guy wanted to do a project in that zone. Okay. And so I've done 2 trips in there, because one of the thing was curiosity, is I wanted to know, where does all this honey come from? Because you can go there and you can buy 50 tons of honey. Okay. And all this honey is coming from log hives. You know, they're, in fact, not log hives. They are made of tree bark. You know, they cut the bark out of the tree and they make this cylindrical thing and they hang it on the tree. And bees come and they make this honey. So I've always been curious, how I want to know, where did this honey come from and why is it so much honey? And I went there, I've been there twice. And the other interesting thing is, which then this British guy, he was doing hunting, you know, hunting game, shooting game, and he was doing it professionally, because in Tanzania you can shoot game, you pay, you can shoot a lion, you can shoot an elephant, you pay a lot of money to do this, and there are professionals who take you out to do this. So he was one of the guys. So he's been going around Tanzania and he knows. So we went there and we were looking at all this thing and wondering, well, why is it that Tanzania is doing this thing so well? And you know, it was very interesting, because the Arabs, when they came to East Africa for slave trade, you know, the Arabs were doing slave trade in Africa, especially in Eastern Africa. They would come to Tanzania and they would walk all the way into this area. This area is called Tabora. And they were trading for ivory. They were trading for ivory and they were trading for slaves.
Elephant tusks, right? Ivory.
Yes. That was the big business. The slavery and elephant tusks. And so the Arabs started developing this honey business, because they went there and they found all these local people doing this honey. And so they started buying it, the honey and the wax, beeswax. And they were taking it back to Arabia. And they would come again and they started forming a system where they were like setting up these local people like agents, you know, to go and buy from the local people, bring it to a center, and then they'd pick it up from the center and take it to the sea. So even now in Tabora, where there's this town, there is still an Arab trader trading honey there even till today. And so this honey business became quite a trade. Okay? And so then it developed, and now the whole of East Africa, we get 80% of our honey from Tanzania. Okay? So it's coming from there. Then I went after that, I went to the same British guy. I went to Mozambique, which is on the other side of Tanzania. Okay?
Yeah.
And the same vegetation, no trade. Because the Arabs did not go there.
Okay.
Because that was Portuguese country. You know, that was all run by Portuguese. So the Arabs never went to Angola, to Mozambique, but they were all in Tanzania. So this is how we figured out that is how that business was done. And you go there and you find thousands and thousands of these log hives on trees. This forest is miles. You drive the whole day in this forest. I've been in that forest. You drive like 6 hours in that forest, and there's no people, and it's bush, and it's these trees. You know, they're big trees, and you go under this canopy, and you're driving inside. It's something else. And so these people, they go in there, and they put these hives on the trees, and the season of honey comes, the swarming season, bees come and they colonize these hives. Then they go and when the honey is ready, they go and they take the hives down, they vandalize all the honey out of the tree, out of those hives, and they leave the stuff on the ground. And then they come next year and they clean them up, they put them on the tree, and the same thing starts again. So basically, it's not beekeeping. It's called honey hunting.
Yes, sir.
Okay? And so most of Africa, we don't do beekeeping. We do honey hunting. You see, when you're doing honey hunting, you're not interested in preserving bees.
Huh.
You are interested in taking whatever honey you can get out of that hive. Okay, it's like you find a nest of bees in a tree trunk, you cut the tree, or you cut the tree down, you break it open, take whatever. I've seen this, I've seen it in Mozambique. They cut the tree down, destroying the trees. So it's mainly honey hunting. And even till today, it is still done. But now you know, it's interesting because the old people, they used to do this, but they used to do exactly what I hear you saying. They take only the honey out, and they leave the bees with a bit of honey, but they take most of the, whatever honey they take out. But today, they destroy everything, because even if there's some honey on the comb, and there's some brood, they cut the comb, they throw the brood away. So you're actually destroying the colonies of bees. And this is one thing that I have been trying to preach to people, that we have to conserve these bees. We cannot be hunting these bees and destroying these colonies of bees, because actually the bees are declining. In fact, worldwide, bees are declining. And here in Africa, it's declining because of we don't manage them. We don't understand how to keep them. We're just interested in taking honey out of them because the demand for honey outweighs the supply.
Yes.
And so when that happens, anything you can find, you'll take out of it. But you're not farming it, you're not managing it, you're just destroying it. And this is happening a lot in these parts of Africa, and it's quite a big thing. And that's what I preach in every day of my life, that we need to conserve bees, we need to manage bees, and do it properly so that you can conserve these bees and don't destroy them. Whatever honey, because honey is made from flowers, like you just said. So you've got seasons where there's a nectar flow and seasons where there's no nectar flow. So if for instance, where you're talking about in the Himalayas, I understand a lot that it's a very nice place. It's very good, lush vegetation. It's very nice. But when you come to some of these parts in Kenya or in Africa, you get droughts. Okay, so, and global warming is quite serious. So you get drought. So you get maybe a whole year where there's no flowers, it has not rained, and bees, they die. They just die. So it's a matter of understanding also the environment. If you're going to do beekeeping, and I'm telling you, I've learned the very hard way. I started beekeeping. This was not my business. My business was agricultural machinery. This is my business. But then I got caught up with this honey business, and I was like you, I knew nothing, zero. So I started, because I was so keen to do it, and I started learning, and it got very complicated. It got so complicated at one time, I thought maybe I should stop doing this job, because I don't understand why we're not getting honey. 1 minute you're getting honey, the other minute you're not getting honey. But then when you start understanding it, it's not only about bees. It's about environment. It's about weather. These are the things, you got to now start understanding the humidity, the sunlight intensity, all that kind of thing, because this is what triggers the flower to produce the nectar. And if there's no nectar, there's no honey. In fact, there's no bees. because out of that nectar, they make wax. Okay? So if you don't have nectar, they're not going to build combs.
Yeah.
So you have to have the nectar to build the combs and to give them energy, because honey for bees is energy, sugar, energy. The pollen they get is protein. That's for feeding young bees, and it's for protein for them. That's their protein. So you need nectar for energy, for flying, because they fly to death, by the way. So they have to use energy. So if you don't have that nectar in the flowers, you've got flowers, but there's no nectar. How come? You start wondering, what is happening? You've gone to this place, and you're seeing all these flowers, but you don't see bees on the flowers. Why? Because the flowers are not producing the nectar. Now, why is the flower not producing nectar? Because maybe the humidity is not correct. Maybe the sunlight intensity is not correct. Maybe the moisture is not correct, so that the plant can bring up the sugars from the ground to the flower. So it becomes very, very complicated to understand these things. And not many people understand this. If you talk to some of the big American beekeepers and some of the old beekeepers, they understand this. Because for me, I can go to a place and I just look at the place and I know there's no honey here. They don't bother, there's no honey. The bees are working, yes, but there's no honey. Because of the environment. And even for me now, I say 40% is about the bees, 60% is about the environment. And you have to understand the environment, how it works. Because you see, like now me, I start to understand, paying attention to global warming. Global warming, the temperature might rise maybe even 1%. And then in the beehive, because the beehive is operating at 35 degrees, okay? Inside the beehive is 35, 36 degrees. Now, if that temperature goes slightly higher, you have a problem. You have a very big problem. Because bees are controlling the temperature inside the hive. With their wings, they fan, and they create an air vortex, and they cool down the hive. Now, if the temperature rises up a bit, they're spending too much energy trying to cool this thing. So it's a problem. So now you have to think about ventilation. It gets quite complicated. So this global warming you're hearing about is doing a lot of damage to the environment and the bees and the flowers, and it's quite complex. Because like here, even here in Kenya and in a lot of parts of Africa, we don't understand the flowers. Which flower gives you nectar? Which flower gives you pollen? When does the flower come into flower? What are the seasons? I mean, if you go to America and you want to do beekeeping, you go to the local beekeeping association and they've got the Floral Calendar. They'll tell you which month this comes into flower, what is this doing. Here, there's nothing. I don't know about India. I don't have, but I would have thought maybe some of these big beekeepers in India, they know. They must know.
Yes.
They must know. So you have to understand all these flowers. So here in Kenya, what I've been doing for many years now is trying to understand which flowers, because here there's a lot of wild vegetation, there's a lot of flowers of all types, but there are specifics. Which specific flower gives you abundant nectar flows so you get a lot of honey? Okay, and this is what we are busy doing, documenting, data collection of all these things. And I've got data myself. I've got, you were telling me you're a web designer and you do computer stuff. I've actually developed a program that manages all my beehives. Okay, so we have all these sites, because I've got very many sites all around the country, and some of them are mine, and some of them I work with communities, and some I lease and that kind of thing. We have QR codes. We work with QR codes. Okay, so we have a QR code on the site, and the guy who goes to that site is scanning the QR code, and a report comes on the phone, and he must fill the report. So the report, one of the things about the report is what kind of flower is flowering at that time he's visiting. So he's recording. Even local name or whatever, he records. What is the weather like? Was it raining? Was it sunshine? Records. Then he starts recording all the rest. And that information, when it's sent, comes to my office, and I have the data in my office. So we're keeping data so that we can plan how to go, because we're trying to do it in a bit of a commercial way. So we are operating 1,000 hives all around the country. So and this data is very, very critical, because then you can plan the next year. Okay, you might not be 100%, but you'll be 60%, and that's good, because the 100% is also related to the weather, because maybe a place has not got rain. So if the place is not, the rain didn't come on time, or it's come earlier, which is disturbing the pattern. So, but you get to understand that in June, July, that place is producing honey. From which tree we know, So that's how we sort of trying to develop this thing. And that's what I've spent a lot of my years trying to understand about this. Also trying to understand the bees, because in Kenya in India, I think most of the beekeepers are using the European bee.
Yes.
Here
And
we've got
depends on places. Yes.
Yes. Here we've got African bees, and they're very, very aggressive. Very aggressive. I mean, you can get killed with these things, If you don't know what you're doing, you get killed. So the aggressiveness is a big problem here, because managing them is quite complex. So we don't have European bees here. Okay? I wish we did. If we did, then it would be a different story, because then I could start producing queen bees and doing all that, because it's so complicated. But so we're dealing with African bees. They're very aggressive bees. So, people are frightened of bees. People don't want to get stung with bees. So you got to be taking care of where you're keeping these beehives, how to handle them, that, people don't get stung. So it's quite a thing. So you got all that. You got to understand the vegetation, the weather, and of course, different places in Kenya have got slightly different weather patterns. Then you've got the more semi-arid areas where it might rain one year, it might not rain. And then some of these areas have got very good types of vegetation where they can produce a lot of honey. But if it rains, so it's quite tricky to understand. Yeah.
So what are the early challenges when you began and then you thought you want to give it up at a point of time? So what were those ignorances, and then how did you learn them?
I think the challenges is you go into something you don't know, and then you think you can Google everything on Google, which I did. Got a lot of information from Google, and found that yes, I'm dealing in a different area, a different country, different time zone, different weather from the nice picture Google gives you in America, where they're producing hundreds and thousands of tons from I don't know if you know canola, oilseed rape, sunflower, big plantations, big production of honey. We don't have that. We're doing wild stuff. We're dealing in the bush. So it got complicated, because I thought it was like everybody thinks even today, because people come to me and say, I want to start doing beekeeping. So the first question I asked the guy, why do you want to do this? because everybody thinks it's very easy. You buy a beehive, you put it there, you catch a colony of bees, and it's going to make honey. But that's not how it is. But that's what I thought. I thought it's very easy. In fact, for me, it was not an issue of dealing with beehives. For me, it was an issue of going to the rural areas, buying honey, processing it, and exporting it to Japan, because that was my big thing. And by the way, it's never happened. Because then I got involved with this, and I was told by some certain people that if you want to do this job, you have to do it professional. It has to be done in a proper way. And then now it's starting to. In fact, I brought in the Langstroth hives into Kenya. I'm the guy who brought them in here. Okay, 1994. I brought my hives from Zimbabwe, brought them here, and then started manufacturing. And so I manufacture beehives. I make beehives, I sell beehives, and I produce honey. That's good. So the issue of honey, I thought it was a very easy game, and it became very complicated and more complicated, and done a lot of mistakes, and trying to follow Google and do some things that don't work here. And it got so complicated, so you start going back to basics. And so I went all the way back to basics. And then, because then I remember there was an Italian guy who came here to teach me how to produce queen bees. So in Italy, they've got a big hive. It's called a dadant. It's a big hive. So he told me, you've all got to make these big hives. Maybe these African bees, because they're very prolific. So I did that, and I messed up, because that's not how they want small hives. So then I went to make small hives. Okay? So I've been experimenting with all these things, and basically you go back to basics again. And it's not the issue of the big hive, it's the issue of the kind of bees that you're operating. It's about the weather patterns, it's about the flowering. It's so complex, man. And then it got so complicated, So, like, I go to Tanzania and I see these beehives on trees. So I wonder, why are these people putting these hives up in trees? Because we're putting them on stands, we're putting them on the ground. So why are they putting up on trees? So I started wondering, now I'm going to develop a Langstroth beehive, and I'm going to develop a system where I can put them on trees without climbing the tree. So I developed that, and it's all working. And I start understanding, maybe the reason why they're putting them up there is the difference in temperatures. Because you've got air flowing, you've got wind flowing. Whereas when you're putting them on ground, it's getting hotter. So in fact, it's true, because I've got now about 800 beehives on trees. I'll send you some pictures of these hives on trees. These modern hives up there in trees. And so we bring them down. We've got a system for bringing them down, harvesting them, inspecting them, put them all back, and putting it back on the tree. And it's so good, because of course, the other problem here in Kenya is we've got an animal called a honey badger that destroys beehives. Okay? This is, most of Africa there's a big problem with the honey badger. If you read about it, you'll see it's a big problem. So they don't eat the honey, they eat the brood, because it's high protein.
Yeah.
The young bees, right? So putting them up in trees is fantastic, because the animal doesn't get there. You can have them dangling in the trees there. Nobody touches them. Nobody goes there, and they're just there. So these are the kind of things that you learn as you go, and it's taken a long time. There's a local Kenyan guy that I've been working with now for about 16 years. And this guy, I've taught him, and he's very, very good. He's fantastic. But this is over a long time of training and talking, and Yeah.
So what is the simple, in short, please explain the honey production process from the beginning to till the honey goes into the bottle.
Yeah, that's quite easy, because what happens is, of course, the bees build the combs, and then as they're building the combs, they're bringing in nectar, and they're putting honey in the combs. And when the comb is full of honey, they will fan again and recircle the air inside the beehive, so they control the moisture in the honey. Because honey is sugar, right? It's basically sugar, and it will ferment. So these bees, they're very clever. They're very smart things, eh? One of the smartest things, because what they do is they fan air in there, and they remove the moisture to about 18%, 19%. Then they seal the comb. They seal the comb with wax.
Okay.
And when that comb is sealed, that is when the honey is ripe. And that's when we take them out. Okay? So for the local person who's doing this in those log hives, you're looking at those log hives you're doing in Himalayas, and the log hives they do in Tanzania. You cut the combs. And you cut the combs, and then you put them in a container. Okay? Now, when you do that, what you've done is you've cut all the combs from the beehives. And so now the cycle has to start again. If there's no flowers, there's no more honey. If there is still some flowers, first they've got to build the wax, then they've got to put the honey. So if they build the wax and suddenly the flowers get finished, story's finished. No more honey till the next time. But the system that we do is we've got these beehives. If you must know the modern beehives, they've got frames inside. Okay, and so and they've got a comb starter, what you call a comb starter, which is a strip of wax made with a hexagon imprints, and the bees will build the comb on that, and they will build the comb on that frame. And when the frame is sealed, you take the frame out, you put an empty one there. This full one, you take it to your extraction center. You remove the capping. There's a special knife to remove the capping, just that top capping. Then you put it in a centrifuge machine, and you spin it, and the honey comes out of the comb. The comb then goes to another beehive to fill honey again. That honey then is removed from there. It's taken out of the extractor into a settling tank, and it's left to settle. So all the air bubbles, because the centrifuge creates air bubbles and some fine particles of honey and whatever particles, all that will rise up, because with honey, any debris or dirt rises up. And so on the bottom of that tank, you've got a tap, and now you get the clean honey ready to pack. That's how it is. So
there is no other processing involved.
No, there's no other process. With your system of cutting combs, your Himalayan system of cutting combs, you then have to go and smash it all up. Then you have to squeeze it to remove the wax from the honey. Now that's quite a messy job, because you will never remove dirt from there. It's always something, and it's not a nice thing. And it's bad for the bees, because you've cut all the combs there. Now the bees have to build again, and it's a bigger job. But when you do it professionally like that, the bees are happy and you're happy. So because the bees, you put back the combs, all they're doing is cleaning up and filling honey again. So if there's still more flowers, they'll fill up honey again. So you'll get another crop. But your system of cutting, that's next year again. See, so that's the problem. And it's a very simple system. And that's the best way to do it. Clean, nice way of doing it.
But we are actually changing the life or the adaptable, the complete lifestyle of a bee. Is it good for, as the time progresses?
You're not changing any life for the bee.
Okay.
You're not changing. Because what you're doing, in any way, whichever any way you're doing, you're still stealing their food. Okay? That's not for you to take. Honey is not yours. Honey is for bees to eat, but you're stealing it, right?
Yeah.
So you're stealing it, destroying it. You're destroying them because you're cutting all their combs. They've spent a lot of energy, a lot of work to make those combs, and you're coming here to cut everything off. Okay? But what I'm doing is I'm putting another comb back.
Okay.
So bees are continuing doing what they're doing, and I take the honey. See? But when you do it in the way you're doing it, the way it's the local the honey hunters do it, you're actually destroying the bees and making these things even work harder. And if there's no more flowers, then they don't have any food, and it's a problem. And so because this beehive has got compartments. I think you've seen it, right?
Yes,
Langstroth.
Langstroth.
The Langstroth, yes, the Langstroth. So you've got a brood chamber, and you've got the super boxes, which are the honey chambers. And so there's honey down in the brood chamber, which you don't take out. You leave that for them. Sometimes even maybe leave some frames of honey in the supers for them. So you don't take everything out. In fact, the Europeans and the Americans, they will leave some honey. They don't take all of it. Because it's not yours. They need it for energy. So why are you robbing it? So it's not that you're destroying the bees doing it in a modern way. You're actually conserving the bees.
Okay. And what about infections and absconding nature of bees? Is it natural, or how you control, how you manage these kind of challenges?
Yeah. Absconding is very many things. Absconding can be because of invasions of insects like ants. It could be an environmental problem. There's no flowers, so bees have to move. In fact, the African bee has got a very high tendency of absconding and swarming because of the droughts. If it's too dry or there's a drought, they'll move to another area, and they can go very far. They can travel very far. The whole swarm will travel very far. So the absconding and that is depending on weather. Maybe it's dry, maybe ants have come into the beehive, or if a queen fails in the beehive, the bees must make another queen before it fails. And so the queen does a mating flight. It gets mated in the air. Okay? So if you have a failed queen and the bees make a new queen, that queen has to go for mating. And if it goes for mating and maybe a bird catches the queen and eats the queen, or something happens, there'll be no queen in this beehive, right? Now, to make a new queen, they need a certain age of larva.
Yeah.
And they need food. They need honey. They need pollen to make the royal jelly, to produce royal jelly, to make the queen. Now, if for some reason that colony does not have larva of the certain age after they've made that queen, they cannot make another queen. And because that colony, there is no queen that lays eggs, so the larva production has already gone to zero, so there is no queen. So that hive will abscond, will die, will get finished. Okay? So that it's a cycle, and it's very interesting to understand.
When the queen is dead, you will give another queen manually there? I mean, you will...
No, you can. I can do that if I'm a professional. Okay. But if you're not professional, you don't even know that the queen is dead. You're just assuming. You're just seeing some bees flying in and out. And if you've got one of those log hives, you can't even check. But with my frame hives, I can open it. I can pull the frames out. I can see if there's any larva. Yes, there's larva. There's a queen laying. Or if there's no queen, I can take from another beehive I can take some frame of larva and put it in here, and these are going to make a new queen. Or if I'm very good, I can produce queen bees. But for the whole issue of how bees behave and all this queen rearing, that there's good information on Google. That you get that from Google.
Yes,
That's it's the same with all these type of bees, all those species. Basically, it's the same principle. It's only the thing about the production, the flowers, the weather is what's different in different countries. That's where Google you get a bit messed up. But if you want to know about queen rearing or queen production or larva and all that, there's a lot of information on Google, and you can get that. Yeah.
And what is the business model, sir? Like how this honey is priced? What is the cost of 1 kilogram of honey?
That's a bit of a challenge in this part of the world because honey in Kenya is a luxury item. So it's expensive for the local guy to eat honey, to buy. Now I'm having a very big challenge here in this country, which has been now for a long time, is that if you want to buy honey from local people, it's very expensive to buy. And if I want to sell honey, I'm also too expensive. Now, the reason why that guy is trying to sell me honey very expensive is because the demand outweighs the supply. Okay? So the demand for honey is very high and the supply is very low. So this guy who's trying to sell you 5 kilos of honey, he thinks he's selling you gold because he's got this 5 kilos and he thinks it's worth a lot of money because there's no production. Okay? Now for me, I'm trying to sell this honey because I'm basing it on my cost of production. I've got transport, I've got labor, I've got rent, I've got all sorts of things which I cannot sell my honey at a cheap price. So I've got to put a certain amount of profit. So, and the other thing is that the production is not meeting the demand. My production is still too small. Okay? So what I've been trying to do in all my years of doing this is trying to get very high production so I can reduce the price and move more honey. If you move more honey, you can sell more honey and you can make more money. But if you're trying to make more money from very small production, then it's not working. It's not working. And that's our problem here. And so we're getting honey from India into this place. It's cheaper than producing it locally. See, so it's a problem. So you're trying to educate people to use local stuff. It's much better than imported, but then there's a price war. So the next thing you're thinking about is how can I export this honey? So, but then to export the honey, you need big volumes. So you're in a catch-22 system here.
How are you managing all these things?
That's a good question. I don't know. I can't answer you, but I do.
Yeah, of course, yes.
Yeah, so the focus in my life of beekeeping, the focus is production.
Yes.
I don't focus on selling honey.
Yeah.
Because honey is not a perishable item. You can store honey for 50 years if it's good honey. So you can stockpile it. And I do. because I've got certain people that I sell honey to supermarket, and I can maintain the whole year because I'm stockpiling. Okay. So the focus is on production.
Production.
Now, production comes with a lot of its challenges because you've got that. First of all, you've got to understand so many things. You've got to understand, like I said, the weather, the flower, where you're doing this, the places that you're doing it, water. You need water, availability of water, because bees need water to make honey.
Yes.
So all these things you've got to understand to try and get this production. So I'm spending a lot of my lifetime trying to understand how can I produce big volumes of honey. Because it's not only the export to America or export to Europe, export to African countries, because there's big population, there's big demand, there's big market, but you don't have the honey. So that's the whole thing that's going around. And then I've got to mention to you that if you read on Google and you read on whichever place you're reading, honey is the second most adulterated product in the world. Yeah, the first adulterated product is olive oil.
Olive oil. Okay.
Yes, olive oil. The second most adulterated product is honey. If you get time, I don't know if you watch Netflix.
Yes, yes.
There's a program on Netflix. It's called Rotten, Rotten. If you watch that film, you'll see all those things, and honey's there in a big way, and it's the second most adulterated product in the world. And so the catch is, are you selling real honey, or are you selling adulterated honey?
Okay.
That's the question.
So, one simple example of how this honey is adulterated, please. Like
They mix
what kind
syrup.
of adulteration
They
can
mix.
happen?
You see, if you got a supermarket,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. We got a supermarket chain in Nairobi. I was talking one day to a coffee shop chain of restaurants. Consumption, 5 tons a month. Now, how do you get 5 tons a month? Somebody is supplying that honey to that coffee shop. In fact, this was during COVID time, because people were drinking something in this country. It's called dawa. That dawa is the translation of medicine. In Swahili, medicine is called dawa. So it's sugar, it's honey, ginger, lemon in hot water. So that's called dawa. So during COVID time, this was a big thing. So honey became a very big thing. So I asked the guy, but where do you get 5 tons? There's somebody supplying. Now there's nobody in this country who can do 5 tons a month. Okay? So what happens? Adulteration. Because you need the volumes, you start buying Tanzania honey. You buy 1 ton of Tanzania honey, and then you've got syrups, sugar syrup or corn syrup, and you start mixing, and you get this product. This is what everybody's doing. They're doing it in India, they're doing it in China, they're doing it everywhere, and it's a very big thing.
Then how to find which is good honey? See, I know there is this nuclear magnetic resonance test to find the purity of honey, but what are the simplest method to find which is the good pure honey?
The simplest way to know what is pure honey, you've got to know the honey producer. It's finished. That's it. You got to find that guy who's producing honey, and you know that guy is producing real honey. Because like in Kenya and Tanzania, they're honey traders. They're not honey suppliers. Even in India, you have big traders of honey. I know that. But you have to know the supplier, the producer, who is producing that honey. Then you get, because it's very difficult to check even in a laboratory. Very, very difficult. I've been to this international. Do you know Apimondia? Apimondia. Apimondia is, yes, every 2 years there is the World Conference of Honey.
Okay.
And this year it's going to be in Denmark.
Okay.
So everybody goes there. All the honey players, the equipment, Chinese, everybody goes there. So sometimes I go. I'm trying to think whether to go this time, because then you meet all the players and they do scientific papers, they do presentations, and you listen. And there's where you'll hear the biggest problem: adulteration. Big problem. I know it's a big problem in India. Very big.
Yeah, I know. When I started to learn about honey, I stopped buying from supermarkets. I will get from my producer.
Yes.
Even 1 kilogram, it's expensive, but still I get it from there. Otherwise, I go and bring it from there because I want to feed my kid the most best honey.
Exactly, because you're trying to move from sugar to honey. But now you're buying this honey in the supermarket, and it's even worse than sugar because it's something else now. Yes. So, and what's happening now, even here in this country, a lot of people are getting health conscious. They want healthy foods. So now, the more you get to know about the beekeepers and who and where the product is coming, then it's got a niche on it, you know.
And then this fancy term, organic honey. What is your opinion about it?
My opinion.
How do we define organic honey? How do we define organic?
Yes, I'm going to tell you about that, because that word organic is very misused. Because for honey, if you use the word organic, you must be certified. Okay? And there are certain bodies that are doing this certification. And the way they do the certification is they're not certifying the honey, they're certifying the area where these bees are operating in. That in a certain area, there is no pesticides. Okay? That is how it is done. So when you see somebody saying organic honey, I mean, I cannot use the word organic, even if my honey comes from the bush, and I know it's not, there's no pest, I can't determine that. It has to be certified with a proper certified body that gives that certification. And that's how it's done. Depends on the person.
And there is one on your website I read randomly. I accidentally found it. You said beekeepers are professional liars.
The best liars in the world are beekeepers. I'm telling you. Well, my vision is to produce honey in volume. My vision is to get people in this country to understand beekeeping and start producing honey in the right way, in volumes. Put the price down, make it affordable for people to eat real honey. That's the basic thing, you know. Affordability, get volumes. Of course, food production, pollination. We need bees. I'm very involved in that now. I'm quite involved in that, by the way. Pollination for food production, and that it's a big thing. I mean, it's huge. I also do some pollination contracts where we are providing bees for pollination on crops, that kind of thing. So that's the whole thing, and conserve bees and and get and let bees thrive. Get bees to thrive, man, and not destroy them. That's the whole thing. And of course, and make money out of it. To do a business.
Yes, business.
So it's all tied up with environment, food production, business. So it's all tied up. I tell people, well, not many people know what I do. I do a lot of work, very serious, hard work, and not many people know what I do. And I don't advertise too much, but do a lot of work. And yeah, if you do come out here, you will see quite some interesting stuff because we have beehives in a lot of areas, different vegetation zones, different people. It's very interesting, very interesting, very, very interesting.
Do you like honey, sir?
Yes, I use honey every day. Even I was just drinking tea with honey.
The original honey from your honey.
No, original honey. My honey is original honey.
And how is life? What is your life beyond beekeeping?
Oh, I'm a bit of a farmer. I do farming as a hobby. No, it's quite a hobby because I've got 10 acres of land somewhere, and that's why when you called me, I was at the farm.
Okay.
So it's about 50 kilometers from Nairobi. So I go there maybe every weekend, maybe in the week I go there because I've got, about dragon fruit?
Which one, sir?
Do you know dragon fruit?
Yes, yes. Dragon fruit, yes. It's now in boom in India also.
Yes, I've got 2,000 trees of dragon fruit, and I'm expanding on that. So it's my new project. And of course, they need a lot of bees for pollination, so nice.
Nice.
So farming is my hobby. I get very committed with that, and apart from my bees, which we do a lot of work with bees because you're working 24/7. I do a lot of driving because some of my hives are 200, 300 kilometers away from Nairobi. So we do a lot of driving, and yeah, it's interesting. So you get a bit of office town life, you get a bit of country life, bush life. So it's quite interesting. Quite interesting.
We used to watch cricket in India. Cricket is like it's a tradition culture. So Kenya is also have a good team at one point of time. I don't know. Suddenly Kenya disappeared, and then they came back again now. Do you like cricket?
Yeah, cricket. I used to play cricket in school. Yes, I do.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I do. And Kenya is big in cricket. Yes. Yes.
And the final question for sir, there are many questions, but yeah, we have to cut down the discussion.
Yes.
Short. And also, I don't want to take much more of your time. So, for a first-time traveler and a woman solo traveler, if she wants to visit Kenya, is it safe?
Yes, it is. It is safe. It is safe. You just have to know where to go and not to go. Otherwise, it's safe. Yes.
And
I'm actually writing a book.
Wow.
Yes, I'm writing a book with a friend of mine, and I think we're about halfway now because we got a lot of pictures to put on. It's going to be a very, very interesting thing. It's something that I always wanted to do, and I found this friend of mine who's a retired guy, a Kenyan. He's retired, very, very educated guy in the agricultural industry, very knowledgeable. And yes, he decided, okay, let's do it, and we're doing it. So it's going to be quite interesting. Very interesting.
I'm also working on my second book, sir.
Really?
Yes. I published my first book a couple of years ago, but
Yes.
I've reworked on that, and then I will soon. Actually, it's complete. I'm just waiting for one final review from one of my closest associate. So once that is over, I will republish the second edition of my first book. And also, I'm also working on my second book, which is not a fiction, which is going to be about my country with my first-hand experiences that I
Oh
have.
yeah, your ride around the country, yeah.
Yeah. And other than that, thanks a lot for sharing such a wonderful information. And then someday I'm definitely very soon, maybe within another 6 months, I will make a visit to Kenya, and then possibly I will come and then take some of your time, like.
Oh yes, I'd be very happy to take you around and show you all these things we're talking about. Yeah.
And then likewise, next time when you are in Gujarat, you should, anywhere in
Yeah.
India, you should buzz me. Just,
Uh,
Venky, I'm here.
okay. Cool. Thank you.
Then,
Okay.
then I'll take
That's
you
good.
way to travel in India alone, or if you are around, I can take you wherever that I have
Okay.
access to.
Thank you very much. Okay. Cool.
On this note, thank you very much, sir.
Welcome. Thank you.
And then a big applause for your efforts to,
Thank you very much.
for your vision to, take the beekeeping forward in Kenya. And I wish that day should come one day very soon. You produce lots of honey, original honey.
And I will do this by next year. I'm sure. Cool.